was like a black shade in my own seeing of myself. I was a dark being, uh, with knowing who I was. I was still Peter. I had no pain, but I didn't understand what was going on. And as I was trying to figure this out, a, a, a pinprick of light appeared in the far, far distance, and this pinprick of light rushed across this vast distance. And as it came toward me, it expanded and communicated to me telepathically faster than the speed of light without language. When I say telepathically, I wasn't a sequence of words, it was a data load. Kaboom, without language, no structure of concept. And it came right to me, and it told me, I'm taking you. And I said to it, I don't know what's going on, but I'm not going anywhere. And it sort of no, and I kind of took all my willpower up, like, no, I'm not going anywhere. And it just took me like I was a daisy in a field, plucked.
Welcome back to Awakened Minds podcast. Today's guest is Peter Panagore, who today will be sharing his near-death experience, which was a result of freezing to death upon a mountaintop. And today we're going to learn about it. So guys, without further ado, I welcome you, Peter.
Thanks, Natalie. Thanks for having me. Hey, Jimmy.
Hey, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today, Peter. And before we dive into your near-death experience, I thought it would be important to share a backstory about yourself and the type of person you were leading up into your near-death experience, because I do believe you had some quite remarkable life-changing experiences. And I just wanted to get a feel of who you sort of were before this experience.
Well, religiously, I was raised Roman Catholic and Greek Orthodox, which meant that I attended two churches that historically hated each other, and both claimed to have the absolute truth. And that, even to my childhood brain, did not make sense to me. And so I was sort of very religiously raised, but also with controversy in my own head. But when I was 5 years old, I had an out of body experience. An angelic being came and took me into a divine space. And I began to understand myself as not a human being, as with a higher origin and with a job to do. And so throughout my childhood, I had a series of these events, right, even up until the year before I died. And they turned out to be a precursor for what happened to me. I had no idea that they were leading me in this direction or preparing me for this, but only in hindsight, I could see that, oh yeah, that's what was going on. But while it was happening, I didn't understand. But what I did understand is that the divine was so much more than the religion was teaching me. I went to Catholic high school. I read the Bible.
Let me just stop you really
Yeah.
quickly. I have a question already. And
Okay.
what was it like for you being in a Catholic background? Like telling your parents, did you ever bring up the fact that you saw angels?
Oh
What was
no,
that
never.
like?
I did it once when I was 5 years old. The first time that this happened, I brought it up to my mom as soon as this happened. I ran into the house. My kid brother, who was a baby, was sleeping, and I nearly woke the baby, which caused my mom to get upset. And so in my traumatic little life, I associated getting in trouble with talking about what happened to me moments before, and I learned to keep my mouth shut. So no, I never told.
Right.
Actually, I've only begun to speak about it. It was much safer for me to come out as a near-death experiencer, which is what I did several years ago, uh, than it was to come out talking about angels and mystical experiences. The culture, I didn't feel, was prepared enough to be able for me to come out. So I didn't want to risk my credibility. As it was, I was
Mm.
risking my credibility coming out as an ND ear, but it felt safer to me. So I'm only now beginning to talk about that. And my mom and my dad, um, they, I asked them about what was I like as a kid, and my mom said that I was always more compassionate than other kids, which is not to say I was also not a troublemaker, because I was. These two things are not exclusive to each other.
Yeah, so from there, what happened? So dive into, leading up into your near-death experience, what actually happened?
Well, I was on a national student college exchange program from my public university back east in the United States to a university in Montana, which is way out west in the Rocky Mountains. And I didn't want to go home for spring break because of an incident that happened in my family where my sister had run away but vanished and caused a lot of trauma in my family that reverberated down through the decades, still going on. Um, so I decided to go on a high adventure. I'd been a backpacker. I'd backpacked all over New England. I'd backpacked all over the Rocky Mountains in the year that I was there. I'd spent a lot of time growing up in the wilderness and in the cold winter camping. I was on the National Ski Patrol. Outdoors was my element. And so I wanted to go have an adventure. I went to the outdoor club and I found a fellow who was planning a trip to British Columbia and Alberta, Canada on a 10-day snow caving backcountry wilderness expedition topped off by a 1-day ice climb. And I thought,
Wow.
oh, I could do that.
Can you put
Yeah,
any
no
more in
big
there?
deal.
Wow.
Yeah, it was great actually. The skiing into this wilderness area in British Columbia was fantastic. We had 10 days, I think it was 8 days in the wilderness and the snow caving and it just being in this immense beauty. It was cold and we learned to trust each other because of
Mm,
the circumstances, but it was really, really fun. Uh,
yeah.
uh, at the end of that, we went on this 1-day ice climb. We skied back out. We drove up the Icefields Parkway, which is north of Banff in Alberta, and we went to this world famous climb called Lower Weeping Wall. And I'd never been an ice climber. Tim was a certified lead climber, had just completed his course. He had all the gear. I had to borrow gear. I was a rock climber, and I did a lot of rock faces with ropes and carabiners, and I was a bit of a mountain goat. So I was
Yeah.
stable on rock, but ice climbing was new to me and I couldn't come up with all of the equipment that I needed. So I borrowed and I rented, and I ended up with one ice axe and an ice hammer. And I talked Tim, who was not in favor of this, but I talked him into letting me do this climb because I was 20 years old, 21 years old. I think I have to do the math. I was born in 59. This is 1980. Anyway, so um, I talked him into it. But the problem is that the axe is significantly longer than the hammer. The hammer comes to the top of your palm. And so when you swing the axe, you get an extra foot of distance. It's like this is mincy walking, ding, 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 versus full stride. And so that slowed me down. But also with the ice axe, there's a way to have a strap on your wrist. You can set the axe and you can let go of the axe rather, and dangle on it. And the physics keeps you in place. And so instead of exerting all this energy in your forearm,
Mm,
you can just open your palm and kind of hang there. The hammer, on the other hand, that strap is at the bottom and it's not really meant for climbing, although you can. I proved that's true. It's meant for chipping ice and putting in ice screws and taking out ice screws as a lever, but
wow.
you can't set it in the ice. So I set us up for this. And by the time we were a couple of hours from the top of this climb, it was a three pitch climb. We already knew we were in serious, serious trouble because most of the other teams who were on the ice that day, and there might have been a dozen other people, they had descended and left.
Mm,
And there was one team that was still on its way down. Well, we were not even reaching the top yet. So we finally reached the top. And that last team, as they were leaving and the sun was setting, they looked up and they're like, "What? What are you doing?"
mm,
And only their arms were hugely waved. And as soon as the sun went down, the hypothermia began almost instantaneously. The temperature dropped about 30 degrees, and
mm,
my all of my muscles and all of my body began to pulse independently of each other. It wasn't like a pulse, pulse, pulse. It was like everybody's got its own rhythm, and my jaw was clattering, and I was shaking, and my partner, buddy Tim, was in the same situation. This progressed through the night. we decided that we were going to die if we stayed where we were. And one of the things that you learn, I learned as a Boy Scout, I think I was 11 years old, is if you get lost in the woods, you stay right where you are, you don't move around. So then the rescuers can find you. But in this case, if we stayed where we were, we knew we were going to die. We had
Right.
talked about snuggling up against the mountain and trying to conserve whatever heat we had, but we didn't have any heat.
Mm.
And so it was move or die. And we decided to move through the night and try to get down these three rappels in order to get to our tent, which was down at the bottom. And it was pretty scary. It was traumatically marking in my life, terrifying even.
Yeah.
But neither Tim or I lost our heads because another rule of the wilderness is if you panic, you die. So we both we're steady minded to this whole event.
So, can I just ask you real quick, did you make your way down whilst in this hypothermia state? What was that like?
It was terrible, and the hypothermia. So as the night went on, the night got colder, and we
Mm,
didn't have any more food with us because this was a day climb. So we had consumed what we had. We had water because there was snow and ice to suck on.
yeah.
But we were skinny minis at the time. I was 20, 21 year old super fit kid, and the energy my body was consuming in order to keep me warm was also being expended by our action of moving forward. So not only was the getting colder through the night, our energy level was depleting, but it was our very energy level that we had, the reserve that we had, which was
Mm,
keeping us warm. So we were pressing up against time. How we were going to be able to get down off the mountain before we ran out of energy and actually froze to death. And the
yeah.
hypothermia is a progressive state. It's so it stole our reason. It made us confused. It took our coordination. It froze. My eyeballs were freezing. I don't know how to describe how to feel cold in the back of your eye. The
Mm,
Our hands and our feet were on fire with the cold. I still have all my digits, but I have permanent damage in my feet and my face and my hands.
mm.
It's just the
Still
way
to
it
this
is.
day?
And pardon to this day.
Yeah. Oh
So,
wow.
so right here I have on my desk, I have my super great motorcycle leather gloves. I don't ride the motorcycle, but I wear these gloves all the time because they keep my hands warm enough so my hands don't hurt. I live in
Wow.
Maine where it's
Is it
kind of
like nerve
chilly.
damage? Is that what happened?
It's nerve damage. Yeah, they my hands got all swollen. I didn't end up with third degree frostbite, but I had second degree, and everything was all blistered and swollen. Things were broken on the inside. My feet
Oh
too.
wow.
I still can't feel my big toe on my right foot. That is a permanent. Can't feel that. Um,
Oh.
it's
Oh
okay. You
wow.
live with these things, but they're constant reminders. The reminders never go away.
Well, you're here
So,
today, so that's incredible.
well,
Yeah.
we fought our way to the place where we had one rappel left, and the hypothermia had advanced very far, but we were strapped into the mountain with a harness. Our harnesses were clipped into the mountain. This was the top of the practice rappel on this particular site. It was still 100, 150 feet up, and we were on a ledge. Um, we fought our way down all through the hypothermia. There was this thing that happened where my I was willing myself to move forward with
Mm,
my inner strength, but there was a moment when that changed, and I reached my mind, my brain reached way down inside its mammalian DNA, or even further back to its dinosaurness, where survival was imperative, and it took over my brain. I don't know how to describe this. I stopped
wow.
willing myself to move forward, and this survivalness took me over, and it was a relief because I was no longer consuming energy of driving my mind. It sort
Mm,
of took over. So by the time we were on this last rappel, I was still in this state. The rope was jammed up above us. I could not free it. We couldn't ascend up. Hypothermia. My feet had become so cold that the fire in my feet had gone out, so I couldn't feel anything. And my hands, the same kind of situation. Talking was extraordinarily difficult because not only were our muscles cold enough not to be able to want to move well, every word we spoke dropped our energy meter. And we only had
Wow.
so much time. So Tim was to my left and he's strapped into the mountain, and I'm to the right. And we're on this ledge, and the moon had come up so we could see some better than we could under the starlight. And the rope was jammed. I couldn't get it free. I unzipped my coat. And I was on the National Ski Patrol, which meant that I'd been trained on mountain ski, cold weather safety, and which included hypothermia. So when I unzipped my coat, I knew it was a mistake, but I didn't care
Mm.
because my body felt hot to me. And this is a
Right.
thing that happens to hypothermic people is they take off their clothes. I unzipped my coat, and which meant that the cold came to me faster. So I accelerated, my body accelerated my own death.
Oh, it's like its own nightmare, like always trying to find a way out, but then you find that it's progressively getting worse. It's just insane. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It left me traumatized. It wasn't until I went back in 2016 and faced my trauma
Yeah.
that I got over the every time I told my story before I went back in 2016, I cried every single time. I just couldn't
Mm.
help it. And it wasn't the dying part. It wasn't the death part. It was the dying part that was
Yeah.
so utterly traumatic. So
That struggle you had at the end.
yeah, the struggle kind of went away. I had After I unzipped my coat and I came to the realization that I was not going to get out of this. I could not go back up and get the rope. It's just not possible to climb up in the dark with the wrong gear, or I couldn't go down. And
Mm.
so when I had this realization that I was not going to get out of this situation, this peace settled over me. Instead of in this drive that I had, this animal drive that I had for survival shut off. And when that shut off, I realized that this is it. I am going to die here. And there was a popular movie at the time, called Little Big Man. And in this movie, Dustin Hoffman, this American actor, was living with this Native American tribe, and the chief of the tribe would get out of his teepee in the morning and say, "Today's a good day to die." And I had this. That's what I thought. I thought, well, today's a good day to die. And I
Wow.
wasn't. I wasn't at this point, I wasn't terrified anymore. This peace settled over me, and acceptance. I started thinking about my parents and my sister and the damage that was going to be done to my parents because they're going to lose another kid. And this was
Mm.
going to be an international incident because I'm an American in Canada. It's going to make the Boston Globe, which is where I'm from. And it's
Right.
going to be ongoing trauma. But there was nothing I could do about it. And I was in the most beautiful place. And the beauty, I stopped and I kind of absorbed the beauty around me. And I began to fall asleep, which is the end stages. And the sleep was like a dropping curtain in a dark stage. So the theater's dark, the curtain's up, and the curtain drops, and you're in pitch dark, and only my brain would shut off. Kaboom, my brain's off. I'm down on the ground, smack my head, helmet, get back up again, pull on the rope, and this repeated. And then I stood up this last time, and I had in this tunnel vision, the big, huge black circle, way out to my peripheral, where you stick your fingers out and you can kind of see your fingertips. Only it was a big black circle, and this thing started closing very rapidly. And what is this thing? And I'd been, because I was on the ski patrol, I knew about the I knew the sequence of hypothermia, but
Mm.
I knew the tunnel vision was a thing, but I didn't know this was what it was. And so as
Yeah,
it
you never
closes, I
saw.
remember thinking, I must be falling asleep again. This is different, but I must be falling asleep. Instead of this curtain dropping, it just went down like, and as it went to darkness, awoke. It was this weird experience where I expected to be asleep, and I was surprised. I was like, why am I not asleep? Why can I still think? What? And all of my pain went away. I thought to myself, well, I should have fallen and be lying on the cliff, but I feel like I'm standing, and in front of me, this huge opening expanse appeared. And this expanse was darkness that extended the size of the cosmos. And I couldn't see behind me, and I had some kind of substance to me still. I still had form. I was like a black shade in my own seeing of myself. I was a dark being, with knowing who I was. I was still Peter. I had no pain, but I didn't understand what was going on. And as I was trying to figure this out, a, a, a pinprick of light appeared in the far, far distance. And this pinprick of light rushed across this vast distance. And as it came toward me, it expanded and communicated to me telepathically faster than the speed of light without language. When I say telepathically, I wasn't a sequence of words, it was a data load. Kaboom, without language, no structure of concept. And it came right to me, and it told me, I'm taking you. And I said to it, I don't know what's going on, but I'm not going anywhere. And it
Oh no,
sort
you're
of
not.
no, and I kind of took all my willpower up, like, no, I'm not going anywhere. And it just took me like I was a daisy in a field, plucked.
Wow.
And it enwrapped me and it enfolded me. And I knew who this was, because this is the same angelic being that had carried me numerous times. But in this particular case, every single time I'd been carried away before, there was a cord, a cable connecting me to my human body. I'd be carried away. I'd be given this experience. I'd go back down right into my body again. But this time, that cord cut. No, I was no longer connected to my body. And at that point, I became,
Wow.
what I just, everything I'm saying is metaphor. Just I've constructed language to try to describe the indescribable. And so
Yeah.
I had a physical form shaped like a human being, like my human being, but I was made of light. I had no molecules. I had no, um, I had no molecules. I didn't have a brain or bones or anything, but I still had this shape. And I was inside this huge angelic being, this consciousness that was communicating to me super intelligence, super comfort, super welcome. And I had no capacity for controlling myself. I was sort of like there was to use another movie, there was this movie, I think it was Arnold Schwarzenegger or somebody like that. And there's these futuristic cars. When you get in a car wreck, it injects foam all around you and protects you. So you
Oh,
bounce
that
around
was
inside,
Sylvester Stallone.
Sylvester Stallone, right. Okay.
Yeah,
And
that
um
was
and
that was. I remember that movie.
so it's
That was with
kind of I
Wesley
was in
Snipes.
yeah, Wesley Snipes, that's
Sorry.
right. But that's
Yeah.
okay. The I was immobilized. I had no capacity for movement. I was completely frozen inside of this angelic being, but it was pumping me full of comfort. And so I was in the most comfortable essence that I'd ever been in. And it was transparent. I could see out of this being into this void, this darkness. And I was superpositioned. It was superposition. I should talk about that first. It was a limitation of the unlimited, and I knew that as it was speaking to me in intelligence, vast understanding, that it was in a limited form for my understanding, and it was speaking on behalf of this unlimited. So it was these two things at once, and I was two things. I had this God's eye point of view outside of my body, outside of this angelic being, paralleling back up the tunnel, back up the same path. This angelic being had come to collect me, as it came down. We're going back up again, but I'm outside looking at this entity and myself inside of it. And my inside self, when I look over, I can't see me. I am non-local consciousness observing a localized aspect of myself.
Wow.
And so I'm swept back up, and I get to the edge. I'm carried to the edge of where this being had come into this space, and I it either opened or I popped out, or it became this other realm. And this other realm was an infinite illuminated darkness. And I was alone in this darkness. And no longer was I a light body with a human shape. I was an orb of consciousness. And this orb, this me, I knew myself, the origin of myself. It's like, oh, this is who I am. This is who I've always been. How did I not remember this? And I was in this utter aloneness, but completely at ease. No fear, no confusion. I knew myself, and I could see in every direction at once.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any eyes. So my consciousness was my sensory perception and my self understanding and my thinking. And so I could see in all these directions at once. And I could see this vast darkness that extended the size of our universe, but beyond which there was like a shield, a dome of darkness that I could not penetrate. I could understand and see as far further than I could possibly see now by eons. But there was a point at which I couldn't penetrate this infinite. And I knew that it was the infinite. I knew that it was the being itself, but I couldn't penetrate it. And so I'm in this contentment. And
So you think
then,
that was God?
oh yeah.
Okay.
And no gender, no religion, no thing. I was in a place of nothingness, no molecules, no energy. We talk about it, we talk about spirituality in terms of frequencies, electromagnetic spectrum, and energy and photons. It's those are all metaphors for this unspeakable.
Mm.
It's anything that I conceived of, anything that I experienced in life was nothing like it was there. I was in a place of no thingness. And yes, God, but so much
Right.
greater than that word. So the word has been roundly polluted with human expectation of our
Mm.
own desires.
Yeah.
But yes, but so much more.
Yeah.
And then this darkness opened, and this darkness tore open, and I describe it in the book as a doorway. This door opened, but I can talk about it as a waterfall. I can talk about it as an avalanche of snow, and it was this illumination appeared, and this illumination was the most beautiful. I hesitate to say thing because it was not a thing. The most beauty I'd ever seen, and it was simultaneously pure, radiant white, and simultaneously a bazillion different colors and electromagnetic spectrum. Every star that I could see that night, being so far north near the Arctic Circle, where there's no light pollution, a bazillion stars all twinkling, all these colors. You could see their sizes and shapes, and it was like that, and much, much more. And it wasn't flipping between white light and the one white and the many colored. It was both at the same time. This is a place of paradox. And so it's all these colors, it's this white light, and it's the most beauty I'd ever seen. And I want it with all of my being. I want this. I've never wanted anything. And as I want it, so I think, so I do. I think I want this, and I move toward it as it moves toward me. So I'm moving without action. I'm moving without physically wanting to move my legs because I don't have any. I just go, and it comes toward me. And as I get close to it, I can see that it has a solid surface, that it's also a deep, deep, deep. It's translucent. I can see into it. The same light, white light, and all these colors, like a field of stars, and then I can see through it, and the through part of it is into the dark infinity. And I want this. And so I touch it with my being. And as I touch it with my being, it is all life. This is life beyond all beingness. And I see a hand up. I'm going to take a second here and stop and see what you guys want to ask.
Oh no.
Oh, did I
I
put
was
that hand up? Oh, you
You
did.
raised your hand.
yeah, did I do that?
I don't think Jimmy
I,
did
I
that.
think I think it's my hand, and I didn't touch the keyboard.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
spirit
My hands
going,
are up
yes, let's
here.
talk about this.
I
That is,
I I would like to ask you, when what you saw with God was the same thing that I saw when I had an experience where was I looking up at the ceiling and there was an 8 foot, it looked like the universe coming through the ceiling, but there was all those colors in it. Like you said, it was light, dark, and every color in between that of nebula colors and things, that's what I saw as well. But
uh,
what I want to ask you is this:
mm,
a lot of people, when they speak of God, they only think of God as being this positive being. Like there's God and then there's the devil, right? And my experience is that God is both of these things. If God is infinite, then he isn't all one way. It has to be all things, right? Is that
yep, all
your opinion
things.
there?
It's deeper than that, but yes, and all suffering. Suffering is part of God as well, and there's no separation from that. And that's a
Right.
really I'd love to, as I talk, Jimmy. I'll get to be able to explain what I see about that. But in brief, um, there's nothing that exists that's outside of the oneness of being. Nothing.
Mm,
Everything is this. All life comes from this source, and that includes all the limitations that we have and experience, including the dark entities that have harassed me in my life, including the suffering that I witness around me of humanity's inhumanity to
mm,
human beings. All that. Nothing is separate from it, but nothing is lost either. Everything is made of this divine light, and the it gets to the question of why is there evil in the world? Why do people suffer? And I like to talk about that, but I'll talk about it during my life review because I experienced that very thing. So once I entered into this light being, which was all life, I my I was in timelessness, and so I experienced all sorts of things all at the same time. And I I heard my original self being called into being eternally. And what I mean by that is not my human self, but my highest soul self, always being made in the now, but also having existed in a millennial eons kind of way too. It's paradoxical. And as this happened, I saw this eye of the divine, which was a terrifying brilliance that looked into all of me and could see every shadow of my just previous human life that I had hidden from everyone and often even from myself. So I didn't have to live through the whatever bad thing I had done again. I hid them all and locked them away. But this terrifying illumination showed me myself, and I was catapulted into a life review where I experienced all of the pain that I gave away in my life from the point of view, from the interior experience, chemical, biological, mental, emotional, psychological state of every individual that I hurt in my life, simultaneous with experiencing my reasoning for causing those and my emotions. So, superpositioned again, I'm here in my own body, I'm in this person's body, I'm going through a chronology of all of the pain that I gave away. And the divine it's not like there's a scribe in heaven with a pencil writing in the book of life or the Akashic records or whatever you want to call it. The divine being itself is experiencing this with me. And so there was nothing that was unknown about me because the divine is in me. So the divine suffered with
wow.
me. And that was caused by creation itself. So I not only experienced the karma of my giving away of pain to everybody I gave it to. And then it turned out that all that I gave away accrued to me. I saw all of humanity's brokenness and inhumanity on this equality, this level of similarity and this dissimilarity to the unlimited. And the unlimited, the uncomprehensible, immense, ineffable, divine being of love, who is always through this whole experience speaking love to me in a cataclysm of a tidal wave of love, which was the reason why I was seeing my shadow self, because I couldn't see the fullness of the light with as long as I was in the way. And so I could see the radical didn't just extend to human beings, it extended to all animal life, but also to all of the universe. The whole structure of the place is this limitation, and that its existence is the limitation. And that if there was no limitation, people were like, well, why can't we be in heaven? Well, we can be, but heaven's not here. This place exists because it is not that. It is a limited form. And in its limited form, everything consumes something else. Everything causes pain to something else, whether it's a black hole at the center of a galaxy sucking down planets, or whether it's the microbe that's killing a person because they got an infection. Everything is causing this suffering, and that it's not my fault that I was the way that I was. I had shame for causing all this pain. I wasn't found guilty. I felt shame in comparison to this infinite love, and that um, my limitations were burned away from me. So it was like a divine fire, a cleansing fire, where all of that was eliminated, which allowed me to hear the love with the ear of my soul, because all the love that I gave away in my life and all the love that I had gathered in my life became this lens through which I could hear the divine voice, which had no sound, speaking to me, love. I love you. I have always known you. I've experienced this life with you, even while you were doing these dark things as a kid. Vandalism. I did some vandalism as a kid, and I lived a compassionate life, but I also was a bit of a troublemaker. Just my makeup. And so I had never been alone. I had always been observed, and that this eye of blinding light, which was awful, awful, full of wonder and awe, full of fear and awe, burned me clean. And as I shed all of this, how did this happen? I simply listened to the love being offered. There was this forgiveness wasn't new; it was always with me, always on offer. All I had to do is accept it. And so I accepted this immensity, and I can't see how you couldn't accept it. There was so much, the love was so powerful. There was so much light. It was like being an avalanche. You can't, there's nothing you could do about this thing. It's just gotcha. And so that's how it felt to me. And so I had this forgiveness inflate me. And when I accepted the light, I inflated and I inflated, and there was beauty and love, wholeness, wellness, knowledge, understanding, wisdom, beauty, bliss. The list is truth, very, very long. And it was all one thing. We in our lives separate them out as human beings. Trust is different than joy, but not there. It's the same thing. And this inflated me, and I became like a big, huge balloon of this divine voice who was filling me full of itself. And I got to this point at which I could see my original self. And my original self was like a photon. And it was superpositioned with this field of photons. And this field had no perceivable end or height or depth or width. And I was one of these many photons, bazillion photons, but I was outside. I was outside the field, but there was like a cable a connecting cable, quantum entanglement with this, with the many and the one. And so I had this reduced form while being the same thing. And from
Mm.
this perspective, I could see another level of my soul. So I had all these levels of my soul. And so the level that I could see below me, it seemed to be below me, was this elongated tail of my incarnational soul, the part of me that incarnates into life. And it was like this baguette, this long baguette with kebab spears in it. And the kebab spears were all of my incarnations, but the baguette itself was much bigger loaf than all of the kebab spears put together. And there were a lot of spears and lots of lives, and none of them were me. There was a chronology to them, but from my point of view, they all happened simultaneously. They were all in the now, and I could see the like the bread of me came out the kebab into another world. I was still the bread, but the kebab spear was like an access point to another life and another world. And I wanted to know, I wanted to see. And so I was allowed to enter into two of my lives and look from the inside out. And one of the lives was like a lizardy thing. I don't know what I was. I wasn't a human being. The world I was looking at was utterly alien. I don't know if I was on Earth
Would
a
you
long time
say
ago.
possibly reptilian?
I could have been, but I was kind of a an ignorant creature. I didn't have a lot of I didn't have a lot of capacity in my brain. Um, so whether I don't know where I was and I don't know what I was, but I remember thinking afterwards that was lizardy. Um, and also the world itself looked my eyeballs, my physical eyeballs were perceiving the world through a different set of cones and rods. And so what I was seeing was not what I would ever see as a human being. And then I saw into a human life. And in this human life, I entered into this body and I could see my feet. I remember looking down and looking at my feet. I'm walking on a road and I've got sandals on and I have dirty feet and I can see my toenails. And I've got, and I'm wearing this like a roby kind of thing. And there are palm trees and old houses. And I'm obviously on earth. And there's a group of people I'm walking with, a bunch of men. It seemed like might have not just been men, but we were all having this conversation. And we were in a sort of maybe coming into a town somewhere and where there was this is the road everybody was walking on and I had this distinct experience of or understanding of spirituality and then I was pulled out again and I wanted to know and understand all of the structure of our universe. I wanted to understand how the whole thing was put together. I wanted to know the plan. I wanted to see the code. I wanted to understand the whole top to bottom, inside out. And all of that was downloaded into me and I understood it. I love cosmology and astronomy and biology and geography and I love all of this kind of stuff. And I understood all of it, but I also understood that there was a point at which I couldn't understand how it was put together because there was still this infinite beyond my
Mm.
capacity. And when
Right.
I was being inflated, now all this is happening at the same time. While I'm being inflated, I reached this point at which I felt like one more molecule, even though there are no molecules, molecule of the divine being itself would enter into me that I would obliterate.
Mm.
I would cease to be even this super inflated being of light and enfold back into the many. And then was reduced like a balloon going down. Having seen all this, having known all this about myself, I say to the divine, and now I've got some sort of connection to my just previous life, Peter, and I say, am I dead? And the voice says, yes, you're dead. And I say, well, uh, and the voice all the way is saying also not just forgiveness and love and showing me myself and trust and beauty and hope and all that healing and wellness. It's saying, come home, come home, come home. This is come home. And I say, what about my parents? And as I say, you know, yeah, they're in a tough spot. I was swept across this darkness to this edge where I describe it as the Higgs boson field, which is where energy becomes matter. And so I suddenly I'm still inside this energy space of this divine realm, but a bit of me is poked through this interface where my perception is out in our universe. And now part of me, I'm in this universe, I'm in our universe. I see all these galaxies this way and that way and this way and that way, but not this way, because this way I'm in the divine realm, and there's stars and planets and vast distances, and I'm being done to. I'm not like looking around. I'm being like shown, like somebody's got my jaw twisting me around. I don't have a jaw, but I was being shown, and I my perception was zeroed in back to the origin of the universe. And this origin of the universe, there was the infinite darkness, and out of this infinite darkness was pouring light. And this light was being woven into the very structure of our universe. And I could see the where our universe began, where the light began forming the darkness of the universe, but the light was woven into absolutely everything there is, all the galaxies, all the space in between. There's this weaving of this light that comes out of this infinite darkness, which is expressing love and beauty and non-genderness and infinity beyond my capacity of understanding and everything. But I could see that everything is woven into the light, and the voice now is magnified, and it is this infinity that is speaking love through the entire universe. And as it's speaking love beyond measure, I make all of this out of myself, and I am love, and I love all. It's producing all these other universes. It's like popping out universe after universe after universe after universe. There's like layer after layer after layer, above and above and above, or below and below and below. It's just like all this immense love, and all of it was aimed at me. I saw myself as the particular most beloved of all. And then as I understood that I'd always been loved, I always will be loved, that there's no end of the love, that I am made of love, and that all was well, is well, and will be well because of this love. My perception is shifted down to our galaxy, down to our solar system, down to our Earth, and I see Earth in real time. It's a hologram, and I can see all 7 billion people of it on it all at once. And I can see inside every single human being this golden fleck of light. And this golden fleck of light, the voice says to me, in the way that I love you now, I have always loved you, and I love every single one. No one is outside of my body, of my being. Everything is woven in. And so even the dark attitudes of humanity, the things we do to each other, Jimmy, which is kind of swinging around to what you were asking, that is part of it as well, because I could see this light in war. I could see half the planet was nighttime and half the planet was daytime, and that I could see wars going on. I could see murders. I could see rapes. I could see babies being born. I could see wedding celebrations. I could see people being bored. I could see everything all at once, and not a single person didn't have this light inside them. And the whole planet was filled with this fog, and this fog prevented each person from seeing this, that I could see, no one else could see, that could see it, they couldn't see. It was blindness. I wanted to see up close, and so I asked, can I see up close? And I was flown down, and a more corporeal form, like I had a shape now, and I was inside a ship, which struck me as a U.S. naval ship in the middle of the Atlantic, kind of between Africa and South America, because let's just like that. And now I'm in the captain's cabin, and there's the captain in front of me, and I can see this inside of him. And we go up on deck, and I follow him up on deck, and I can see it in all the crew, and I can see it in the wheelhouse, and then I'm out again, and I'm now experiencing this infinite love that is infilling me, that I know myself as love. And as I see this, I see my parents' faces. My parents' faces appear twice, mom and dad, and mom and dad. And mom and dad over here, I see their suffering up until this point in their lives as an accumulation. And then I see their lives with me. And if I go back and I see that they still have suffering, and then I see their lives without me, and I see much more suffering, like a tenfold. But at their ends, I see their deaths. I see that they die and come to the same belovedness that I'm in, because no one is separated from this. And all of this is in the wink of an eye. And I understand that my life on earth was the snap of a finger. My time, the time is a not a thing the one experiences in heaven, because time is a construct of the material world, and I'm above that. And so I think to myself, well, time's not a big deal. I can go back and do a little time there to help my parents out. And so I say, if I go back, can I come back here? And the voice says, yes, you'll come back here. And I was like, oh, that's good. Okay. So now I have a promise and a guarantee. I say, then I choose to live my life thinking I want to help my parents out. And the voice says to me, you won't live your life, and flicks me out like a pebble off my finger and shoots me back. And I fly back. And as I go back, I'm back inside this angelic being, and I'm being compressed. I'm being materialized. And I'm flying back, and I could see this huge beam of white light going by me. And I could see back to the edge of darkness, but I couldn't see back into the heaven I had left. But this big, huge beam of white light is going by me, and it's as big as us or bigger. And this angelic being is ginormous. And as I look at it, I see it terminates at all of these doors. There's like a million doorways. And in the center of all these doors, and they're all concentric, is this beam of light taking up a good portion in the center. And the light radiates out and declines as it gets to the further edges. And the voice says to me, choose light. And so I think, I know that I have a message. I know that I have a mission, and I know that I need to be enough of a human flawed being to be able to be to show that you don't need to be a perfect person to be in the light. And I wanted to be a little creative, and I wanted to be a writer, and I wanted to be, I made some choices. In an instant, I made these choices. I made the choice for light. I didn't choose the purity of the light. I chose less. I chose some humanity. And so the door that opened for me was off to the side of the light, close to it, but not in it completely. And the door opened, and I'm carried down this tunnel. And in this tunnel, I see that all these doors have tunnels, and inside of my tunnel are all these doors that lead to all the other tunnels. And I fly down this particular tunnel, and I get to the end of it. I'm being flown. And as I get to the end of it, I'm even denser. And there in front of me is my body, although I don't know. I'm like, what is that? And there's a body dangling on the cliff with the harness strap to the mountain, and crouched over me is this body, this Tim, and he's shaking me and he's screaming, but I can't hear him. And then the angelic being sticks me through my chest, like opens my chest and crushes me into this small little ball and shoves me inside. And then I'm looking out through this like eye opening in my heart, and I can see this entity, which is both the fullness of God and a lesser form. And I watch the slit close. And now I'm trapped inside this. And I'm like, what is going on here? I don't understand. I have no control. My brain comes back online. And as my brain comes online, pain returns instantaneously. It's the first thing. And I think to myself, what have I done? I'm back in this land of suffering. I had forgotten what suffering was. And now I'm stuck inside this. I'm encased in this thing. And my brain's coming back online, and I begin to hear, and I hear noises and screaming and crying, and then it resolves into language. Don't die, don't die, don't die. I open my eyes, and he's his light right in my face. Don't die, don't die, don't die. He's got me. And and he's like, I thought you were dead. You were dead. I thought you were dead. And he pulls me up and we have this conversation. He's talking to me, but he has this conversation. I don't understand anything. I don't know who I am. I don't know where I am. I don't know what's going on. All I know is this thing really hurts and I made a bad choice. And
Yeah, right.
that then my remembrance of where we were and who he was and what was going on came back to me. I pulled the rope. The rope came free. We descended and we treated for hypothermia. And from that point on, I was an entirely different person. Um, I
Wow.
we self treated for hypothermia. We had some crazy adventures on the way back. We got put in jail. We totaled the car. I totaled the car, and I then I knew that I was a different person.
Yeah.
Um, that's so I'll stop there for now.
So
Wow, it was amazing.
thank you for sharing that, first of all, because
Yeah.
that was just breathtakingly beautiful. Like, I'm kind of just lost for words at this point right now. It was absolutely incredible to hear of that experience. What was the first thing that what was the first thing that you voiced when you woke from this experience? Did you mention what you had saw to your friends?
Oh no. No, no,
No.
no, no, no. I didn't understand what had happened to me. I didn't have any language.
Mm,
I didn't have language for years. I didn't understand. I had to construct in my own head a way to conceptualize it for myself so that I
mm,
could begin to understand it. But because I really didn't understand what had happened to me. The the previous mystical experiences that I had, I was still connected to my body. But in
yeah.
this one, I was severed. I was an entirely separate being. And my connection to this was gone. And I knew that I felt like I was an alien inhabiting a body and that
Mm,
I was operating this body. It was like a computer. I was operating on an app, but most of my data was still in the cloud. I wasn't even completely in my body. I was trapped in here, but my consciousness was above me and I was looking through my eyes. And I had learned as a child to keep my mouth shut about the
mm,
things I couldn't talk about. And so I began a very long inward journey. So let me put it this way. I was in a theater company based in the university and we were going on a national tour. It was 24,000 miles, 64 shows, 10 weeks, and we had a 15 passenger van and a pickup truck and a trailer with all our theater gear. And I didn't go in the van once. I went in the van once after I got sunstroke to
yeah.
get out of the sun, but not when anybody was in there. I stayed by myself in the back of the pickup truck with my winter gear, my sleeping bag, and because I did not want to associate with anybody. So I became a minimalist conversationalist, and I had been practicing meditation because I went to Catholic high school, and my
Mm,
Catholic high school happened to be near the Barry Buddhist Center in Massachusetts with Jack Kornfield and
okay.
Howard Kabat-Zinn at Harvard and UMass. And so my Catholic school one of my teachers learned meditation, centering prayer, taught it to me in 1977. And so I've been practicing it ever since.
Wow.
And I dove inside myself to find my own stability. And
That's
I kept it a
incredible.
secret for 20 years. I didn't tell anybody.
That's pretty rare in the Catholic Church for somebody to teach meditation, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
It is because it was the Trappist monks. So there's this monastery outside of Boston where they used to make jellies and jams. Maybe they still do. But back in the 70s, this collection of monks noticed that all the young people were moving to Eastern meditation. And there was a tradition of meditation in Christianity, in Catholicism, but it was repressed. And there's a whole
Yeah.
stack of books that talk about it. And so they went to Jack Kornfield. They studied Theravada Buddhism, and they aligned it with Teresa of Avila, and Meister Eckhart, and the Cloud of Unknowing, all these ancient mystics within the Western tradition. And they produced a Zen style of chanting and breath and centering on the oneness of being. And that is traditional form that's found throughout the world, chanting on the oneness, chanting with breath, aiming toward the end of self-attachment. And so what I knew about myself following my NDE was that my Peterness was not me, that this
Yeah.
was an overlayer. And I felt that what I didn't want to, I felt that the only way that I was going to figure out what happened to me was to go back there.
Mm. Right. I can understand that because what you've experienced is not in any way, shape, or form 3D Earth humanness. And it's hard enough for you to even describe what you just shared with us previously. So it's like, how do you
There aren't words
integrate an
for it.
experience like that? Do you know what I mean? It's almost impossible. So I can't imagine what you would have went through post NDE. And so through that 20 years of not sharing your experience, what was life like for you then?
I came back with this non-attachment to everything. I
Yeah.
have an attachment to the other side, which I've cultivated, but I came back with this distance. I could see light inside of everything that I could see, but I also experienced the world as being more two-dimensional than three-dimensional, very flat, very dark, very temporary. And when I went back to my university that fall, and I'd been studying mime, so I was a mime in this theater troupe. It was a sign language for the
Really?
deaf theater troupe, and so I was studying mime in addition to whatever else I was studying. That wasn't my major, and I ended up taking a mime class with this guy named Jody, who's still a friend of mine. He's in his 80s, but he studied in the school of Marcel Marceau, and Marcel Marceau taught hatha yoga. And so as soon as I get my first semester, first class with Jody, he was having us do yoga. And then at one point, he wanted to show us chi. And so he put us all in this particular form, and was sitting on the floor. My left leg is up, tucked up to my groin. My right leg is out, extended in front of me. My toes are pointed upward. My spine is straight. I have my left hand cupping beneath my navel. My right hand is above that. He told us to breathe into this, and when I breathed into it, there's a freaking ball there. There was this energy ball there that I could feel with the heat and the tingle, as a living thing. And then he had us raise it up, and to keep our mind in both our palms, raise it up, and it stretched up. And so then he said, and he didn't tell us to feel the ball. He didn't tell us to feel the taffy. It felt like taffy. He said, "So who felt? What'd you feel?" And I was like, I'm the only one raised my hand. I was like, yeah, this is what happened to me. This ball, energy ball, and this like electric taffy. And he's like, what? Come on up front. So he has me sit down up front, and I'm kneeling in front of the class, facing him, and he's kneeling. And he told me to put my hands up, and I put my hands up, and he says, close your eyes. And I close my eyes. He says, what do you feel? I say, I feel pinwheels going this way. I feel pinwheels going this way. I feel pinwheels this way. I feel pinwheels this way. I feel this and that. And he says, open your eyes. And everybody in the class, like, chop, drop. They're all like, because what I did was what he was doing, but I couldn't see him. And
Wow.
so I realized at that moment that I came back with this. Not only could I see it, I could feel it. And
Feel
within
energy?
weeks, the energy, I read Paramahansa Yogananda's autobiography of a yogi, and the 26th chapter changed my life. I stumbled on Satchidananda's translation of Patanjali, the Yoga Sutras. And when I read those, I realized that's what Yogananda was talking about, and that the Yoga Sutras were um, it was a guide, became a guide to me for my interior life and the practice of energy development. And I combined my hatha yoga with the yoga sutras and my centering prayer, and I developed my own interior practice that I then learned to use through 40 years now, while I kept it all a secret. And I practiced my yoga publicly. I'm like at the YMCA, people would see me doing that, but they didn't know I was doing Kriya yoga on the inside. So, because there was no internet, and I didn't know that I was a near death experiencer
Mm.
by name, I came across that information in my third year of divinity school. So I became a different person. I
Yeah.
was going to be an architect in my family's architectural firm, graduate school in architecture. I'd been pushing a pencil, my dad's drafting board. I'd been working in construction all the way through college, swinging a hammer and toting, cutting lines and carrying wood so that I could work both the whole, top to bottom kind of thing. But I decided I couldn't do that. I had to find out what happened to me, and so I went to Yale Divinity School, where the dean of students allowed me to study mysticism across the university. I didn't tell her why I was doing this, but and I'm still in touch with her. I talked to her last week. She changed my life. Um,
Oh.
anyway, so she found money for professors for me. She allowed me to write my dissertation on this, and what amounted to a dissertation. And I went on a journey of language. So not only was I working my interior world, where I found that I was becoming more and more integrated, not in the world, but the more integrated I became in my interior life, then the more integrated I became in the world. I wasn't trying to weave myself into the world because that wasn't working for me. I found that by
Yeah.
weaving myself into the divine, and also I had this fear that I was going to lose it. Was I going to forget this? I needed this energy. If I forgot it, how could I live in this place? So I studied deeply the history of Western mysticism. I read Eastern mysticism, and I went and became a minister and hid in the church for 18 years as a minister in a liberal denomination in the United States. We're doing a lot of social service work, but also lying to my congregations that I was a believer and pretended that I was a Christian when I wasn't.
Love that. I'd love to hear the story about that because I know that you have your own church, right? Called Not Church. Is
Not
that
church.
correct?
That's right.
Very
Yeah, I call
amazing.
it not church. And because I went to this Catholic high school, and it was an all boys school. It was all high achievement college preparatory school, but it was a super jock school too. And it was all guys, and we wore ties. We used to call ourselves thugs with ties. And every year we read a gospel. And the Jesus that I met in my Catholic religion classes was not the Jesus that I saw in the gospels after I died.
Yeah.
He was a oneness teacher, a singleness teacher who was deified by the church, but wasn't actually, never said that, saw himself that way. It was not his self perception. And so I read, when I was a minister, I read very broadly. I read all of the Nag Hammadi texts. I read all of the Dead Sea Scrolls. I read everything, and all of that stuff was online. So I had a library that I could go to. It was at Wesley College out in Ohio. They had this extensive library of all of the ancient books, and so I read through them all. And I what I found was that there were some books, such as the Gospel of Mary, the Gospel of Philip, and the Gospel of Thomas, that became sort of like keys to open the four canonical Gospels, because in those three Gospels, Jesus is as I saw him as I can perceive him, like a oneness teacher, not the only one, but a oneness teacher. And so I've planned for 40 freaking years to try to not deconstruct Christian theology, because I'm not interested in theology, but to bring forth the Jesus spoke in metaphor, and he was constantly misunderstood by everybody. Um, and what he was really, for instance, go in your closet and pray, meditation, make your eyes single and your body will be filled with light. I mean, you can't get much more blunt than that. Make them one as you and I are one. All sorts of examples like that. And so one of my professors said to me, I told this professor that I had this friend and she had this experience, and she's looking for a way to enhance her spirituality. And this was when I was an undergrad, and he was a professor of comparative mysticism.
It's
And he
always a
said, look, if
friend.
it,
It's never
it's
the
always a friend. That's right. It's like he probably totally saw through me, but he didn't let on. And he said, if what your friend wants is enlightenment, have her stay in her own tradition. She could look in the Kabbalah, she could look in Sanskrit, she could look in Zen Buddhism, and she should look in those things. But if it's the oneness that she wants, she'll find it everywhere she looks. And so it will be easier for her not learning Sanskrit or Japanese in order to pursue this if she just stays in the tradition that she's in, which is why I stayed in the church. Because I didn't have any peers. I didn't know who to talk to. There was nobody out there who could understand. I didn't even understand what happened to me. And what I discovered in the Western canon of not canon, but the Western tradition of mystical literature is that there were a lot of people like me, and that I found my peer group. And then I still pretended, I masked to swing around to what you asked. What was it like? I masked. I lived masked. I lived in the closet. I couldn't hide my eccentricities. My ministry was unusual, to say the least. The way that I conducted myself and the way that I worked. I ended up at the biggest church, not the like most people, but the one of the wealthiest churches in the state. I ended up on television, not because I was ambitious, but because I pursued compassion, kindness, love, humility, and charity. And the charity was because I was in this wealthy church. I used the people's money to help those who couldn't help themselves. Homelessness, domestic violence, roofs on houses, cars for single moms, you name it. We together used the tools that we had to patch the world as best we could around us. And there was opposition to that because, wouldn't you rather have a parking lot? Not while that person's hungry. I don't think so.
Right. Right.
So
I know
I finally,
thing.
Go ahead, Jimmy. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Now, say the one thing when I had that experience where I told you where I could see God was that I understood after that as human beings, we don't even understand the full grasp of what love is. Like the word itself doesn't encompass what that means. Like we as human beings have no idea what that, the depth of that word,
Is it possible to bring that love that you felt down to this human experience?
I brought a thimbleful of everything I had happened to me over there. This is so confining. I can't explain how much reduced I am here. It's like, let me put it this way. I've spent my entire life trying to go back and to bring it here to me. And the immensity of the love is what enables me to forsake everything else. I have a family, I have a house, I have a wife, I have, granddaughter. I've lived a life, pay a mortgage, all that kind of stuff. But I am single-minded. And this single-mindedness that came back with me and that I've also cultivated brings the presence of heaven love to me. And love isn't always kittens and puppies. Sometimes love is standing up for the domestic violence victim against the perpetrator, and helping the victim utilize his or her anger so that they can protect themselves from this person. Right. And so it's not always clean. It's a messy sort of thing. And I liken it to when I was in high school, I had these two women that I liked, and I wanted to date both of them, but I had to choose between them. And so I chose one and I hurt the other. And so the love that I chose to give away caused pain to another person. And so it doesn't contain it. It's the closest we have. But I think and I should straighten this out in my head, because I think it's the Upanishads. I think it's in the Upanishads where it warns against using the word love to as an expression of Brahma, because human beings naturally ascribe to words their meaning as according to their experience. And love is dangerous in that it can become a trap for people to think that The love that they have is the totality of it when it's not even close.
Most NDEs, they all share that same exact message. At the end of every podcast for a near-death experience, or I ask, what's a takeaway that you can share? And the answer is always love. And it's
So,
what is this love? It's all encompassing. It is everything.
yes.
I know I
And
couldn't even say the word when it came to my mind in front of God. The word love came out like it sounded almost like in the Matrix where that thing went like this, like an electronic thing. Like I can't even mimic how I said it. And the word still didn't have enough meaning to it. Like no matter how I said it or thought about it, you know,
I love
would never get
particularly
it.
how you said love isn't puppy dogs and rainbows. It's giving to those who need it most. It's seeing that homeless person on the road and giving to them your time. And it's not just about giving them money, it's about having a conversation with them. Like, how are you doing? What can I do to help you? How can I make your day better? Or smiling at someone in a shopping center, or just giving your time to someone else, taking away from yourself and giving to someone else is just the ultimate love, rather than the feeling of love in a relationship, like hugs and snuggles. Like there's so many meanings of love, but if I could ask you, what's the closest feeling that you could grasp from the other side, what would that be?
Oh, it was the moment my son was born and the energy rushed through me into him,
Oh,
where I was part of him and he was part of me. And
yeah.
that would be it, I think.
So you
But
felt that
also, hmm,
at your son's birth, you felt all this?
yeah, my wife was having a hard, he was our second child. And I love my daughter too, just for the record, a lot. Um, but when my wife was having a very difficult birth, and after I think it was 48 hours of back pain,
Oof.
uh, uh, she was on a dance bar in a dance studio, and I was between the bar and the wall, and she was facing me, and the midwife was behind her. We were in a hospital with midwifery, and she was awful. And as I put my hands on her hands, and she looked up at me, and this energy shot up through my feet and down through my head and came out my hands and into her, and the baby popped out like that. Boom. Right. Like the midwife kind of catches her. And my wife's looking at me like, what was that? And I was like, what
Every
was that?
pregnant woman right now is going to want to know you.
Yeah,
And
kid came out like a
and
hot
I
pocket.
like a hot pocket. It did. And then I collapsed. I fell over, and I basically crawled out of the room and was sitting in the hallway. And now I've got a medical team around me. And meanwhile, my wife is like the one who giving birth and the baby's there. And I'm drawing off people. And I ended up in the bed next to her. They put us both in the same room. And they didn't understand what happened to me. And then the first time I hugged him, there was like this, like we shared a ball of energy. Like there was
Wow.
this mutual uh chi ball between our hearts. And he was a little tiny thing, and every time I hugged him, it's like, whoa, there it is, there it is, there it is.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
but this, so love is the treasure of life. The more we love, the more gold bars we get to carry into heaven. That's really the gold bar. The gold standard is love.
Yeah.
And so it's not necessary to have a meditation life. It's not necessary to be spiritual. What's necessary is simply to love,
Yeah.
as best as we can, knowing that it's always this messy thing. Because as much as I love my son, yesterday was his birthday. Um, the We've had trouble, of course. I've had trouble with my dad. I had trouble with my mom. I have trouble with my wife. Everybody's got trouble in their relationships. It doesn't
Mhm.
exclude that. It doesn't make it perfect. But
Yeah.
the love itself endures. And that is the power of it. Is when, because I was a pastor, I dealt a lot with elderly people. There was a huge part of my work. And that meant I dealt with a lot with widows and widowers and the grieving that happened with, and particularly there were people that I knew who died. And I was with this widow once, and she said, I feel like I have a huge hole inside my belly where he used to live. And I had this flash inside my head of him having this tentacle of love extending out to her and filling this space inside her that used to be occupied by herself. And her own tentacle extended out into him and attached into him and filled his space. And there was like this binary system. And she felt that it was severed. And then she had a dream of him. And he came to her in a dream, and she understood that he was not dead. And her experience of the eternal nature, the everlasting nature of love, changed her grief. And as her, because now she knows that although he's absent from her life, he still has existence. And that love still, well, it still exists. And
Mm.
that gave her comfort, and a personal understanding of the eternal and lasting nature of love. It is this thing that pervades all there is, and because it is made of the divine light itself, it can't be destroyed. It can only be reabsorbed into the one love itself, where it is not destroyed. It still exists. It's most powerful.
Let me ask you this question. So you said that you cultivated a relationship with you and, the other side, the experience that you had on the other side. So did you bring back gifts or any psychic ability, things like that that most NDEs do come back with?
Oh yeah, I got the schmear. I got the buffet palette. The um, um, I, I I made an active choice not to pursue my psychic nature.
Yeah,
I made an active choice to singly pursue the singleness and the oneness of being, with
yeah.
all of the focus and all of the practice that I have. And what resulted from that is that um, I pursued the giver, not the gifts, and all the gifts come anyway. And
Right,
so
right.
the way that I think the most obvious one that I have is my radio interference with lights and frequencies. And
Sharon Milliman has the same. We had a conversation not too
I
long
know
ago.
Sharon. we share
I
that in
love
common.
that.
Yep. And so I just saw her a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
So I have that's like the most obvious ones for people to see, but I live disassociated from time. I experience what's going to happen to me just before it happens to me. Much of my day, much of my living waking time, I kind of I know that's going to happen. Kind of,
Wow.
when Luke is on this on the Millennial Falcon, and he's got the mask over his face, and he's trying to learn how to use the lightsaber, and they keep shooting him with lasers, and he finally figures out that if he just feels it, it's sort of like that. Yeah, I feel the future as it comes at me. I don't predict what's happening next week or to anybody else. I just live like my choices that I make create the future door that opens in front of me, and I see the door opens as it opens. So
Mm.
there's that. There's this energy thing,
Yeah, that's
where
amazing.
I feel people. I have empathy. That's one of the things that happens. I feel darkness. I feel light. I see it. I experience it. I The dead have come to me. I've had interactions with trapped dead, aka ghosts. I've had family members come back to me. I've
Wow.
had, I guess, the biggest after effects I have is the pursuit of it itself, the cultivation of that relationship through the negation of my own self,
Yeah.
and and compassion, kindness, courage, strength, fortitude, focus, determination. Uh,
Faith,
Pardon?
faith. It seems like
Faith.
you.
I do. I quibble with the word only because all of my belief systems were erased when I died. And when I came back devoid of belief. I don't so I try
When I say
never
faith, like faith in the universe that they will provide for you.
oh try I would substitute the word trust. Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
It
there you
it
go.
it totally does. And I it doesn't always give me what I want, but it frequently gives me what I need.
What you get, what
and
you need.
you get what you
Like the Rolling
need.
Stones said.
That's right. Exactly. And all you need is love. So I trust, and I work hard. I'm a hard worker. I have worked to create my life. It's not like I sit back and I twiddle my thumbs and wait to see what comes down the turnpike. I, I, I'm
Right.
an active participant, but doors open for me, incredible doors open for me all the freaking time.
Mm.
And I walk through them.
Yeah. Well, I just think that people, the ones that do go to church, the ones that go there every weekend and stuff, they don't really have that trust that you said. Like they're always constantly worried about what's going to happen instead of having that kind of faith. Like if you really did have faith in God and all that, you wouldn't worry about as
Mm.
much stuff as you do on a daily basis because you would trust that the universe would provide for you. The same way
Mm.
as Jesus walked out in the desert. I mean, that's true faith, isn't it? That the
Yeah.
universe will keep you around and there's nothing in the desert. So, that's just what I was trying to get at there. It's just, it
Well, it's
seemed like
true.
after your experience, you don't have any problem worrying about the universe providing for you.
No, because I know where I'm
Wow.
from and I know where I'm going and I know who I am. And my trust isn't based here. My trust isn't based in the universe is providing for me. My trust is based in my knowledge of being known by the knower, by the giver, by being having gone and to the state of union. All there is trust. I might not like it. Okay. So some of the things that happen, I might not be happy about. Um,
Mm.
but it all comes out in the wash, as they say. It all gets washed. I know my end, and because I know my end, I'm able to trust the journey as I go along.
Yeah,
And I do
that's
make choices,
absolutely
though.
beautiful.
If a door opens, if a door presents in front of me, and I open that door and it looks wicked dangerous, well, then I might not go through that door. um,
I have to ask you this one question though. And I find this difficult myself, and it's something that I would love to ask, and it's in regards to letting go. So, a lot of us we go against the river. We
yeah.
understand the law of attraction. We understand how to create your life. We understand how to be a better, loving, more self-caring individual. But it's how do you simply just let go and flow with it so that you can walk through those doors that do come to you? What is the yeah, what could you share with
Oh,
us?
I'm not striving for any of those things that you named. I'm not trying to learn to do a single one of those things. What I've found in what's in the literature, the global literature of mysticism, is the orientation towards the end of self-attachment naturally produces those results. So instead of trying to work them out here and or up in my head and make decisions about it, that I'm going to decide to do this, which is okay to do too. It's not a bad thing. It does change behavior. But I found that by pursuing the giver, not the gifts, all these things are natural results. They're not, I don't pursue being compassionate. I don't pursue being kind. I pursue the oneness of being. I don't pursue, I'll work hard. So right now I'm working very hard for this movie that I've been working on for 3 years. And with this, my book sold to a bunch of producers and we've been in development for 3 years. It's going great, but I'm nose to the grindstone. I'm like I work as hard as I can, and so I try to manifest through
Mhm.
the door that's been opened by producing what I need to produce.
Right.
But the basis of that is back inside here. This is where all the work goes on for the determination to arise, or the dedication, or the way to manifest my life isn't so much that I'm trying to schmooze at the cocktail party and get someone to, slip me $1 million, which I'd be totally cool with if they did. But I'm not out there trying to do that. I'm trying to end my attachment to my false self so that my original self can become manifest to me. And as it becomes manifest to me and lives inside of me, all these things happen. So I have, I hesitate to say it this way, but I'm not sure how else to say it. The process of self-elimination has created the context of a bubble of heaven around me, and that extends into my life, so that it doesn't fix the problems. Like if the flood's going to come and the basement's going to flood and the pump's going to break, that's what's going to happen, because the power goes out. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that in my encounters with the vicissitudes of life and the difficulties of other people, my reaction to them isn't out of a place of selfishness. My reaction to them, I mean, sometimes I still have an ego. Okay, so don't get me wrong, I still got me in here, but my reaction to them is comes from this place of pause and peace. And so when I'm confronted with an angry person, instead of feeding them back into their anger, I retreat into my own calm space. And at the very least, I don't feed them. Um,
Right.
and in that way, I protect myself from them.
Yeah.
Um, so, in terms of manifesting what I want in my life, I instead try to eliminate myself and let the light channel into me, because I'm not this thing. One of the strong takeaways that I came back with from having seen being inside my incarnations was I've never been any one of them. I'm
Right.
only this other higher self. And not only the baguette self, I'm this photonic self that's superpositioned. And that's my orientation. And so, in the pursuit of that, then all these other things kind of work themselves out. They don't make my for a perfect life. I missed the bill. So this organization I worked for several years, when we closed down, they didn't cancel the credit card, and so over 5 or 6 years, this 30 cent kind of credit didn't get paid, but my name was on the card, and it totally dinged my credit. It had nothing to do with me. It like non-payment, 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 non-payment. And I was watching my credit rating go down and down, down. I was like, what's going on? What's going on? And so finally I tracked this thing down. It doesn't stop those things. It doesn't, it's not out there like, it brings me a peace and capacity to deal with the difficulties. And
Mm.
that's where the difference lies. I chose a long time ago not to go into the family business, which meant that I wasn't going to have the same financial capacity as a pastor that I would have had in an architectural firm with the family.
Mm.
So I can't financially manifest the toys, the level of toyness that I'd like to. Um, I like to play and I like my toys. Um, but I'm totally cool with that. It's fine. I'm not trying to draw the sailboat into my life, draw the sailboat into my life. Um, if the sailboat appears, and it has a couple of times, people have given me sailboats, and I've owned sailboats for a
Really?
while that I didn't pay for, and eventually got rid of, because boats are holes in the water where you throw your money. So even a free sailboat is not free. It's,
Break out another 1,000.
it's like, my wife is like,
It's
oh
almost
my
the
God.
opposite. It's like you don't think about, I can't even explain it. I just had a download and now I'm like, how do I explain that? It's like you don't think about a certain thing, but it comes to you anyway, and then you realize how awesome that thing is, but it doesn't mean anything to you. Rather, when people try to manifest things, they're attached to this object, whereas you're not. So the secret lies in the non-attachment, right?
The secret lies in the non-attachment. That's
Did
right.
I
That's
just
how it.
say that?
You
Yeah, you
did,
did.
and its pivot point is the non-attachment to self. And so by all over the world, you see the rabbi at the Western Wall rocking, you see the Sufi dancing, the Tai Chi master, the Qigong master. All of this has to do with mental focus and breath work, and the natural result of that is a non-attachment to self. So it's not like you're trying to detach from yourself. It's you practice these tools and you do detach from yourself. And
Wow.
and so the more one, so I still have an ego, and because you got to have an ego to live in the world. You can't have one.
Yeah,
You
that's
don't have
right.
one. You're super victim. Um,
To be human.
so, but I'm not. I live depersonalized. Um, do I get upset? Like yesterday, I got a flat tire on my bike, um, and
Ah.
and I have a very heavy bike, and there's no way I was going to walk it back, so I had to wait. And rather than be angry and frustrated, I was like, okay, I'm I'm going to sit underneath this tree. And I texted the guy who was going to help me out, and he's like, I can't get there for like an hour. And I was like, that's cool. I'll just sit here. Nothing I can do about it. So I don't like if I'm in the airport and the plane lands and the plane left late and I might make it to the gate and I might not make it to the gate. I don't stress about it. I either get to the gate or I don't get to the gate. And if I get to the gate, great. And if I don't, well then I have to make
Also
do.
great. Oh.
Also great. It's what it
So,
is.
so do you
Um,
think like you said, when you're not the self, so the body would be you're limited, right? The human body is limited. When you're not yourself and you're in, consciousness, you're unlimited. So the more you realize that you're unlimited, the universe will bring you back unlimited, whatever. Is that
yeah,
the
but not,
idea?
yeah, it is the idea, except for that um, there's a limitation to it. If so, if I want an object, I might get that object, and that's the limitation, as opposed to not wanting anything in particular except the oneness of being, and then the gifts just come on their own. And
Mm.
so try instead of trying to, in the state of unlimited being, to
Yeah.
then limit myself by picking, the one ruby ring that I saw at the jeweler. Not that I wear jewelry, and that I might get that ruby ring, but it's just by wanting it, I'm limiting myself.
Yeah. It's like, why pick the
Right.
ruby ring when you can have the entire jewelry store, right? So,
Or the
yeah.
cave where it came from.
Yeah.
It's like, and
Or to
and
not
so
want it
it's,
at all,
yeah. I I
to not
wanted
need
to get in.
anything.
Well, it's hard to do. It's
Yeah.
hard not to. So, um, I had to buy a new microphone. I didn't want to buy a new microphone. I had to buy one. The last one broke. I had to buy a new one. So sometimes I have to do what I don't want to do, and sometimes I get what I don't want to get, and sometimes I pursue things like I'll talk about my bike. I had to get a new bike because that's my sanity. Fitness is my sanity, and so I did a lot of research, and for a whole year I looked around to figure out what I was going to get, and I wanted this particular bike. So I wanted this bike. I had a desire for this particular bike, and I worked hard, and I saved money, and I bought this bike. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, I want to get Cheerios instead of Frosted Flakes. I want to get it's the attachment to it that's really the problem.
Mm.
It's not the desire to want to get a new car because you got to get a new car. It's the
It's,
attachment
I
to
want $1
self,
million because I think it'd just be fun to have it, but really don't care if I have it or not. Kind of that kind of vibe.
kind of like that. If someone's so where I live, this happened not so long ago. It's happened a couple of times. Though there'll be an elderly person, and this happened 5 miles up the road here to a friend of mine. There was an elderly person who had no heirs, and this woman was her caretaker. For the last 5 years of her life, no expectations, just getting a paycheck. But it turns out that in the will, she left her millions and millions and millions of dollars. She didn't
Wow.
act toward this. She wasn't conniving toward this. It just happened to her. Um, and now she's got it. And now she's trying to figure out how to use it and what to do with it, um, which is its own problem. But she
More
wasn't
money, more
after it.
problems.
More money, more problems. That's right. No money, more problems too.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Try without money. See how many problems you
That's right. That's right. You got to live in the world. You got to live in the world.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I've never, maybe it's my own fault, but I've never tried to manifest money. Maybe I'd be super rich now if I did, but I
I was
never
gonna say it'd
bothered.
be cool. Like maybe you should
I
give it a shot, you know? You
I
are the
just want to
one.
I want enough money to where I never have to think about money. That
Well,
I
that would be
want.
really nice. So I'm
I
kind of
don't want
hoping.
nothing to do with it. It's because other people want something to do with it that I now have to have it. You know what I mean? It's the way
Oh,
I
yeah.
look at it. Yeah.
Mm.
Well,
Well, have no attachment to it.
if this movie thing
I don't.
goes, then I'll be able to be in a position where I won't have to struggle anymore with my finances, and
Yeah.
I'll continue doing what I'm doing.
What What is the movie? What's the whole movie about? If you could,
It's about my Heaven is Beautiful. It's
it's about the
high adventure
NDE and all that.
a high adventure film about my near death experience. I was on a podcast at the Buddha at the gas tank, a
Yeah.
good Buddha at the gas pump. I'm sorry, and another near death experiencer heard it, and she called me the next day. And she told me who she was and where she lived. So I googled her, thinking, who's this person? And it turns out she was a Hollywood producer and had been divorced from a even bigger Hollywood producer. And we ended up in this conversation for a year, just talking about NDE because hers was very similar to mine. And then one day she said to me, "So who's doing your movie?" And I was like, "I don't know. You?" And she's like, "Yeah, let me get my ex on the phone." And within 2 months, we had a contract and had done it all legally and
Wow.
film agents and literary agents and publishers and everything else. And but there was a contingency, and the contingency is the book is act two of a 3-act play. And so I've been writing act one and act three for my third book, which will be coming out in another year or so.
Awesome.
So it's going to be a kind of a combination of what led me to the cliff, the adventure on the cliff, and what happened after, and then maybe a sequel after that, because they just optioned this third book. And if all this happens, I worked in television after I was a minister. I had a small TV show for 15 years, 2 minutes in the morning on two NBC stations, local news, and I was the inspirational storyteller. The organization that I was working for was 91 years old when it closed. It started on AM radio, and I was the fifth guy at the helm. And the what I learned when I was working in TV and publishing books is mass market is where it's at. And so
Yeah.
I'm trying to get into the mass market to spread the word about near death experience. I'm really trying
Oh,
to empower other NDEers to speak up because there's tens of millions of us. The more of us that speak up, the more common it becomes to talk about it in the public square, the easier it will be to bring forth the conversation around light and love, and that will empower people who have had other mystical experiences to feel freer to talk about it. And because we have been repressed, I didn't talk about it in public
mm,
for decades because I was afraid to be committed to an insane asylum and that I'd lose my
right.
credibility and
Right.
my ability to earn a living. And we can nudge humanity. I mean, look at the situation we're in globally.
Yeah.
Um, that we're shoulder to shoulder. We have more weapons than we've ever had before. We got
Yeah.
a climate that's shifting. We've got cataclysms happening all over the place. Well, none of those politics or finances have ever worked. Economics and political statements and religion has not kept humanity at peace. What do we have? Well, we have this. We have this
Yeah.
light and this love, and there's tens of millions of us all over the world. And we are nudging the people around us just by living. And I want to bring
Right.
this in the public square. I want to talk about it. Um,
Why do
Yeah.
you think that is? That's a good thing, but why is it that NDEs are so like you're allowed to talk about them without being looked at a certain way? But if you bring up that you met Jesus or you talk to an angel, now all of a sudden everybody wants to look at you like you're out of your mind.
well,
Why
I think
is
one of the reasons is that you can measure people dying in hospitals and then coming back. So there's like a scientific measurement. Oh, that person was dead. Now they're not dead, and they're telling the story.
right?
But part of what I'm hoping to do, so I came out as a near-death experiencer. Now I'm coming out as an angelic experiencer, an out-of-body experiencer, mystical experiencer, uh, because I want to encourage other people to come out. So I'm coming out so that you can come out. What I think the people will discover, and this was a study by a woman named Dr. Marjorie Woollacott, who is associated with the International Association for Near-Death Studies, in a paper that she wrote a couple of years ago, a research project that she did. She found that 60% of people who grieve have an after death visitation.
Right.
60%. That's a huge number. But do we know that in the public square? We do not,
Absolutely not. No.
because it's this huge public secret. And so if we can begin to people, CEOs and doctors and executives and carpenters and teachers and shipbuilders, if everybody can begin to admit that
Mm,
they've had these experiences, then we can begin to talk about it.
yeah.
The One of the things that they encountered in the monastic tradition is that there was no, in the Christian tradition, there was no such thing as being 100% hermit. You always had to have a connection to a community, because
Mm,
the line between mysticism and insanity is pretty thin.
yeah.
And so we don't want any megalomaniacs claiming to be the guru of all gurus with some capacity for giving shock to you, when really what they are is a wolf in sheep's clothing. We've got to be careful of
Right.
that. Um, but one way you're careful of that kind of thing is if everybody turns the lights on, and then there's no dark corners. And when everybody's got the lights on, then you can't hide anymore.
Right.
So
Yes.
hopefully that's going to happen, Jimmy. I don't know, but part of my mission is to try to create as best I can an atmosphere where conversation, even in families or the privacy of a house, or and
Yeah.
on the subway or at a bar somewhere.
I can
Um,
imagine children's books about the little girl who had met Jesus and saw the light and the love, just little things like that. Just get it into the mainstream media, your movie, these podcasts, the books, just bring in the light, anchor it into humanity, and just change it up a little bit, because now is definitely the time to use your voice and let the world know that there's so much more beauty out there that we just have no idea about. And I'm just so grateful for you. I'm so thankful for you sharing your story, sharing your experience, and just sharing what is to come. So I think you're a huge blessing, Peter, right now. So
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
yeah, thank
Just
you.
doing my job.
It's one hell of a job. So
Yeah, you're doing a great job at it. That was an awesome story. I loved it.
Thank you.
I So is there a time frame or when this movie is getting
They
made
tell
or
me not to talk about time frames, but I can tell you what the time frame I'm operating under is.
the suspense.
It's suspense, right? The drama is created through suspense. Um, I'll finish my last chapter for them before the first of the year, and then they'll be off and running with directors and screenplay writers and actor and money. And so however long that takes is
Yeah.
what it'll take. And
Yeah.
meanwhile, next year, I hope that my publisher will give me enough of an advance that I can write this third book complete this third book in a tight fashion, as quickly as I can, to get it out the door so that it can come out before the movie, so that they can come out together, or one preceding the other. And then I hope that there could be a sequel, but I've got another book to write after that, that's going to be more about. So this crazy thing happened in my town that had to do with Sierra Leone, when there was a revolution there about 20 years ago, and how my little town got deep in the middle of it and housed a bunch of refugees, and moved Navy ships and the president of the United States and all this other stuff. And the story is really about living compassion, um, across cultural lines. And
Wow.
it's just a phenomenal thing. And so hopefully, we can take this larger project which is kind of ethereal. NDE is outside of people's experience, and show then, if I can write this book and if it can be made into a movie, would be to show how you don't need a near death experience to live this compassion and kindness, and to change people's lives, to not only impact the people you're helping, but impact all the people who help. It's anyway, so that's what I'm hoping is going to happen. We'll see if it all shakes out. That's my manifestation. I'm trying to manifest.
Right.
I've
I was
been
just going to say.
see what I'm doing.
No, 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 don't manifest it. Just continue being because doors just seem to open for you, Peter. So
Well, I've been working on it, so I continue this place in here, and then I do the work.
yeah,
I thought this was fantastic.
yeah,
Thank you so much, Peter.
yeah,
Thank you guys for having me. There are a lot of podcasts and shows now bringing forth NDE. So you're Natalie and you, James, you're part of the same mission.
yeah,
And it's not just my mission. It's everybody who's had one and everybody who's talking about one. It's all or their own experience. It's a global phenomena. And
Yeah.
the reason why it's happening now is because in the 1960s, cardiac care came online and they started raising the dead in ERs all over the world. And there's a lot of us.
yeah, in the millions, I believe. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And just imagine unlocking all of your stories and sharing all of your experiences in the world and how much that's going to affect the world and just change the whole dynamic. Because I'll tell you now, NDE's changed my life completely, from the way that I view life, from the way that I speak to other people, from the way I see myself, from the way that I can feel others around me. It's changed everything for me. And so it's given us all a mission, all of us who are included in this together. We need to work together, and I'm up there with you, and I cannot wait for the change to begin.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
so
having me
much,
here.
Peter.
Yeah, thank you.